It's December 5th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with a partial cabinet reshuffle of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. President Yoon named 6 new ministers, including for finance, on Monday, largely focusing on appointing scholars and female ministers. An additional shakeup is expected to be on the way. South Korea's homegrown synthetic aperture radar satellite, which launched on Monday, has succeeded in sending signals to a ground station. The Defense Ministry hailed the launch as achieving a milestone for its homegrown space reconnaissance system. Parts of the world are experiencing extreme weather conditions. Moscow saw record snowfall with temperatures dropping to -50 Celsius, while over 60 people were killed in Tanzania due to floods and landslides. With ministers expected to run for the general election next April, President Yoon Suk-yeol named 6 new ministers, including for finance. What's notable about Monday's partial shakeup is that the new ministers are mostly scholars and female. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has nominated people for 6 out of 19 ministerial positions. The anticipated announcement came on Monday after the presidential office started major reshuffles last week. The upcoming general election next April is forcing current ministers who are looking to run for the National Assembly to resign their posts by January 11th, the cutoff date under Public Official Election Act. For Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy and Finance, the former Senior Secretary to the President for Economic Affairs, Sang-mok, has been nominated to replace Chu Kyung-ho, a 2-term lawmaker who is seeking a 3rd. Che worked closely with the presidential office and has been a big part of the Yoon administration's economic policies so far.
The nomination comes when there are unfavorable economic conditions at home and abroad, so I feel a great sense of responsibility facing the long road ahead.
The other nominations were also for ministerial posts having a direct impact on the country's economy. Former Korea Land and Housing Corporation CEO Park Sang-woo has been nominated as Infrastructure Minister, while Kang Do-hyung has been put forward to head the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. To lead the SMEs and Startup Ministry, Oh Young-ju, who most recently served as Second Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, has been nominated. Kang Jung-hae, a former president of Sookmyung Women's University, has been nominated as Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, and Song Mi-ryung is looking to head the Ministry of Agriculture. It's also noteworthy that the nominations announced on Monday are all scholars and experts in their fields with no direct political experience, with the general elections coming up in April. In fact, the majority of the incumbents were already politicians when they were nominated. This is a trend likely to continue with more nominations yet to come. Justice Minister Han Dong-un is also being closely watched by the public. While he is a key man in the Yoon administration and a close confidant to the president, he could also be seeking to debut in politics. In addition, the Foreign Affairs Minister Park Jin is under scrutiny about his potential moves. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea's 3rd test flight of its solid fuel space rocket on Monday was a success, sending signals to a ground station. The Defense Ministry is confident that the country is one step closer to solidifying its own space-based reconnaissance system. Our correspondent Peunji tells us more.
A rocket blasts off into space from a barge floating in water south of Jeju Island. At around 2 p.m. on Monday, South Korea launched a solid fuel space rocket, the 3rd test of its kind following 2 others in March and December last year. Unlike the first 2 tests, which carried dummy payloads, Monday's test involved an actual satellite, developed by the country's defense electronics company, Hanwha Systems. South Korea's defense ministry said the rocket placed a small satellite that weighs about 100 kilograms into orbit, at an altitude of about 650 kilometers, saying the country has taken a step closer to securing an independent space capability to put satellites into low Earth orbit. It also said the successful launch would accelerate the country's surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities, at a time when North Korea continues to threaten national security by launching a military spy satellite violating UN Security Council resolutions. Monday's launch tested the first, third, and fourth stages of the rocket, ahead of the country's plan to conduct a full-fledged launch in 2025. The rocket, currently being developed by the state-run Agency for Defense Development, uses solid fuel for the first 3 stages and liquid fuel for the fourth. Solid fuel rockets are easier to store and handle and are cheaper to launch than liquid fuel ones. Although liquid fuel rockets are more expensive and difficult to store, they're capable of carrying heavier payloads. An official from the Defense Ministry explained that South Korea will be able to launch satellites weighing 500 to 700 kilograms once all 4 stages are developed. The official also explained that South Korea's solid fuel rocket technology is one of the best in the world, and that it can generate thrust force 1.5 times higher than that of rockets developed by North Korea. Amid growing nuclear missile threats, South Korea aims to send a total of 5 reconnaissance satellites into space by 2025 to better monitor North Korea. Poons, Arirang News.
Washington says South Korea is not a subject of UN Security Council sanctions after North Korea accused the U.S. of having a double standard over space programs. A spokesperson at North Korea's National Aerospace Technology Administration claimed Monday that the U.S. has a double standard over South Korea's spy satellite as it helped Seoul's launch while condemning the North's. But according to U.S. Department of State spokesperson Matthew Miller on the same day, South Korea is not subject to multiple UN Security Council resolutions, unlike North Korea, for dangerous and destabilizing activities in the region. Miller added that the U.S. remains open to dialogue with the North and would welcome a peaceful resolution. North Korea said Monday it carried out the 5th national meeting of mothers over the weekend in Pyongyang. Now, some experts point out the day is more than just about showing respect for our women and mothers. For more, we're joined by Jaco Zeslut this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for joining us. What is this national meeting of mothers all about? I mean, why is this day so important for the North?
Yeah, so a little bit of context. Mother's Day in North Korea is celebrated on November the 16th, not in May when South Korea has Parents' Day. Now, although North Korean Mother's Day was a couple of weeks ago, the national meeting of mothers that we're talking about opened on Sunday, and it's a multi-day event, but it's not clear yet for how many days. And we can see some footage here of the mothers arriving for the meeting. Now, on Sunday, Kim Jong-un himself came to address the thousands of mothers who had gathered in Pyongyang. During his lecture, he talked about the growing problem of anti-socialist behavior among young people and the declining birth rate. Now, also at the meeting, another official told the mothers that they should serve as teachers, implanting the purest loyalty in the minds of their children to Kim Jong-un, and to raise more children to be ardent patriots, dedicating themselves to the important posts of defending the state. So this is the basic messages there. Women who have had many children, those who look after orphans, and officials in the Korean Women's Union, which is one of the 5 most important social groups that form what they call organizational life in North Korea. These women were all praised at the meeting. But ironically, the meeting seems to have been presided over and spoken to by men. And this is a long tradition. It goes way back to the very first national meeting of mothers back in 1961, where Kim Il-sung was in attendance.
Right, and also it's the first time that the meeting is being held in over a decade after his grandfather first really celebrated the day. Now, the leader, Kim Jong-un himself, acknowledged that the North's birth rate is tumbling. But the birth rate issue in the North is nothing new, though, right?
Yeah, it's always been difficult, of course, to get accurate statistics from North Korea. But now we know that here in South Korea, this country has a famously low birth rate. And North Korea, in fact, uses that to criticize South Korea through its Korean Women's Union, claiming that capitalist societies have abandoned women and have made becoming mother basically a crime. But yeah, at the same time, the birth rates in North Korea, they don't look that good. And as I've said, it's hard to get accurate statistics out of North Korea for decades because, first of all, North Korea doesn't release them. And also there's a tendency within North Korea on the part of officials to exaggerate statistics to make them look better and to avoid criticism. So the only numbers that we can go by at the moment are those from the UN Population Fund, which calculates that the fertility rate in North Korea this year was 1.8 births per woman. Now, that is, on the one hand, it's about double the rate of South Korea's women, but at the same time, it's also lower than the replacement rate. Now, I don't know if we can say that the birth rate in North Korea has dropped much in recent years. NK Pro actually did an analysis of North Korean population data and found that the country has been inaccurate with its numbers for so long that actually the birth rate probably has been quite low for more than a decade. It's only now that we're seeing it and now that it's being talked about openly in North Korea.
Right. It looks like that both of the Koreas are struggling with tumbling birth rate. Now, the question is, could it be that Kim Jong-un may be trying to speak highly of women, including mothers, and highlight women's roles to maybe prepare for the future of his daughter, Jue? What do you think?
Yeah, this is a very common question. I think it's still too early to make a definitive connection. I know there is a temptation to join the dots and say that he's preparing for the future for his daughter. But talking about mothers is nothing new in North Korea. After all, his grandfather Kim Il-sung did it too. And remember that in 1978, a book was published in North Korea called Mother of Korea, in which Kim Il-sung's own mother, Kang Ban-sok, was given that elevated title. So mothers have always been important in Korea. And then almost 20 years later, in 1997, another book came out calling Kim Jong-suk, that's the mother of Kim Jong-il, calling her the mother of Korea. Now, if Kim Jong-un's wife, Ri Sol-ju, was suddenly to be addressed as mother of Korea or were to be speaking herself to the national meeting of mothers, it would be easy to see that she has an important role and that her daughter would therefore have an important role ahead of her. But now it's still too early to say that.
That's a very good point. Now, some experts are also saying that the meeting is also part of the North's efforts to further deepen the socialism. Now, what's your take on this?
Yes, it's definitely the case that Kim Jong-un wants to keep capitalist South Korean culture out of North Korean homes and minds. Now, in North Korea, women, that is mothers, are still seen as the primary caregivers and the early infant educators. So talking to mothers and exhorting them to avoid capitalist culture and corruption, in other words, South Korean dramas and music, that's a way to try to fence off the next generation of children so that they don't become infected with the wrong kind of entertainment, which could lead to the wrong kind of thinking and the wrong kind of ideology.
Now, lastly, does the meeting of mothers have anything to do with the North's efforts to justify its missile and nuclear development? What's your take on this?
In the sense that nothing in North Korea takes place in a vacuum, yeah, perhaps it's all connected, but I think that more pressing concerns like the raising the low birth rate and ideological purity, these are greater priorities for the North Korean government at this meeting of mothers. I haven't read the script of Kim Jong-un's speech in its entirety, so I don't know if he actually made mention of the rocket program or the satellite launch or nuclear weapons, but the standard justification for that in North Korea is, I'm keeping you safe from American imperialist aggression and protecting Korea's dignity and sovereignty. So that message is the same whether he's talking to mothers, miners, soldiers, or farm workers.
Right, he didn't directly mention missile or nuclear related comments, but still the message could be embedded in his speech. Like you said, the meeting is still ongoing, so let's see if there are any more interesting messages coming out of that meeting. All right, thanks so much for your insight. You have a great day.
Thank you for having me.
China has reportedly expressed a willingness to continue its supply chain cooperation with South Korea amid a delay in Beijing's urea exports to Seoul. According to multiple sources in China on Tuesday, Chinese authorities have notified South Korea that the latest export issue seems to be linked to domestic supply disruptions, and they will look into issues as Seoul raised regarding the urea that has completed customs procedures. South Korean authorities are said to have proposed activating a supply chain communications channel to monitor and share related issues at an early stage. The two sides have also reportedly agreed to set up a working-level consultative group to stabilize supply chains of a range of goods, including urea, as early as this month. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed regrets over souring relations with South Korea, saying that future relations depend on Seoul. At a Kremlin ceremony, Putin said relations between South Korea and Russia are unfortunately going through not the best period, adding that he was ready to improve them. Now, it was a ceremony where Putin swore in some 24 new ambassadors, including Lee Do-hun from South Korea and those from Britain and Germany. The remarks came as South Korea has been condemning deepening military ties between Moscow and Pyongyang that have advanced since North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visit to Russia. The Israeli military, which has taken control of most of northern Gaza, is now quickly moving to southern Gaza. Israel's defense minister says its military won't leave Gaza until all Hamas infrastructure is eliminated. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The Israeli military, which has taken control of most of the northern part of the Gaza Strip, is now quickly formalizing its ground offensives in the southern region. According to the AFP on Monday, dozens of Israeli tanks and heavy equipment were observed entering the area near Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip on several occasions. Several witnesses in southern Gaza also told AFP that they've seen tanks and other armored vehicles moving towards southern Gaza, showing Israel is set to begin a full-fledged offensive in the region. In a statement released by Israel's defense ministry, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Monday that the Israeli army will storm the entirety of Gaza City and the northern part of the Gaza Strip until all Hamas infrastructure is completely destroyed. He also said that the military will remain in Gaza until all Hamas infrastructure is eliminated, and went on to say that the military has begun to work in the south of the Gaza Strip. In the meantime, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he was surprised by the resumption of hostilities between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip and urged both sides to respect their obligations to comply with international humanitarian law. Guterres also expressed concern that people in Gaza had nowhere safe to go and appealed to Israel to avoid further action that worsens the already catastrophic humanitarian situation in the region. He added that civilians and civilian infrastructure, including medical staff, journalists, and UN personnel, must be protected at all times. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Amid early and heavy snowfall over in Europe, Moscow experienced a record-breaking snowstorm. And in African countries like Tanzania and Kenya, heavy rains have resulted in hundreds of casualties. Shin-Young has this report.
Heavy snowfall has struck the Russian capital, causing disruptions both on the roads and to flights at 3 Moscow airports, according to city officials on Monday. The depth of the snow on Monday exceeded 40 centimeters, marking a level unseen in 73 years. Authorities deployed over 135,000 people and around 8,000 pieces of equipment for the snow clearing effort. According to Russian Hydrometeorological Center, Moscow on Sunday posted a record for snowfall on the same day with 10.7 millimeters of snowfall in 12 hours. That marks the highest amount of snowfall recorded in the center's 145 years of weather observation. The previous record set in 1980 was 9.4 millimeters. The amount of snowfall is typically 1/10 of recorded snow depth.
I haven't seen snowfall like this in 20 years, or actually at all in my life.
Meanwhile, the Eastern Africa has been hit by unexpected floods. In Tanzania, heavy rain on Saturday was followed by landslides which claimed at least 57 lives. In Kenya, at the end of November, 120 people lost their lives due to the heaviest rainfall in a century, while in Somalia, over 100 people were killed because of adverse weather conditions. The eastern part of Africa has been grappling with severe droughts in recent years, but starting in October, heavy rain and floods attributed to the El Niño phenomenon have caused widespread disasters. Shin-Young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Indonesia, where Mount Marapi volcano in West Sumatra erupted on Sunday, leaving 11 dead and 12 missing. Rescue officials have resumed the search for the missing hikers, which had been suspended by a second eruption on Monday. There were 75 hikers, all locals, in the area at the time of Sunday's eruption. 49 were evacuated safely and 3 others were subsequently found, with many of those evacuated suffering from burns. Mount Marapi, around 3,000 meters high, spewed a 3-kilometer ash cloud into the air on Sunday, blanketing the surrounding region in ash. It is one of the most active among Indonesia's 127 volcanoes, but remains a popular hiking destination. Marapi's deadliest eruption in 1979 resulted in 60 deaths. Now moving on, a former U.S. diplomat was charged on Monday with allegedly spying for Cuba for over 40 years. Former U.S. ambassador to Bolivia, Victor Manuel Rocha, was arrested in Miami on Friday for crimes including acting as an illegal agent for a foreign government and using a fraudulently obtained passport. In what the Justice Department is calling one of the most brazen and longest-lasting infiltrations in the history of the U.S. Foreign Service, the 73-year-old allegedly engaged in clandestine activity on Cuba's behalf since at least 1981. For 2 decades, Rocha served top posts in Argentina and Cuba, as well as Bolivia. An undercover FBI agent allegedly reached out to Rocha, posing as a Cuban intelligence agent, which led to the discovery of his crimes. Moving over to business news, the English Premier League has agreed to a record-breaking $8.5 billion deal for domestic television rights for TV channels Sky and TNT. The deal will allow Sky and TNT to show up to 270 live games a season. The BBC will continue to show highlights of the games on Match of the Day. The current $6 billion domestic broadcasting rights deal will expire at the end of the 2024-2025 season. The Premier League said that the new agreement will provide financial certainty for clubs throughout professional football until at least 2029. And for our final story, we move to Uganda, where a 70-year-old woman gave birth to twins on Thursday following IVF treatment and became Africa's oldest mother. Safina Namukwaya successfully delivered a boy and a girl via caesarean section at the Women's Hospital International and Fertility Center in Uganda. The babies were born prematurely at 31 weeks and placed in incubators, but doctors confirmed that they were stable. It is a second delivery in 3 years after she gave birth to a girl in 2020. A 73-year-old Indian woman holds the record for being the oldest to give birth following IVF treatment in 2019.
Good morning. Those of us in the capital are having positive morning figures for the first time in a week, and the highs will also be much warmer than norms this afternoon in most parts of the country. But of course, along with the warmer temperatures, the fine dust level will go up high. Central parts of the country, especially the capital area, will be trapped by high levels of dust all day, but the rest of the country should enjoy the warmth outside today. Meanwhile, East Coast regions are in the grip of dry air with a dry advisory remaining in place. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 3 degrees higher than yesterday in most places. Busan and Jeju seeing highs of 16 degrees this afternoon. Mostly to partly sunny skies for most areas, but Seoul will see more clouds than sunshine today. Then there could be a light mix of rain and snow tomorrow, but it won't affect the temperatures much. And look how pleasant the weather is going to be this Friday and Saturday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.